Hey everyone, it's Mike Hambright with Flipner.com. Welcome back for another exciting expert interview show where I interview great guests from across the real estate investing industry to help you learn and grow and to inspire you. For today's show, I'm joined by a friend of mine. We're in a mastermind group together, and he has some really interesting things going on he's going to share with us today. So I'm joined by Coco Collegian, and he is a Los Angeles-based real estate investor that has done well over 300 transactions and in LA and a lot of markets around the country right now. If you're listening to this, you may be a part of this. You're kind of feeling the pinch of finding more inventory. Nobody can get enough deals. And to be honest, that can even be said in a good market, right? Where you're really killing it. You just never have enough. But the pinch is real right now in a lot of markets. And what's happening is investors are having to figure out where to go from here. And what Coco is doing and what some other investors are doing is moving into really, really heavy rehabs, maybe adding on a lot of square footage, sometimes new construction, but really kind of finding ways to add a lot of value with the property that you have instead of just dealing with kind of the four walls of the box that you started with. And so what Coco is doing is adding a lot of square footage to projects, moving into a lot of higher end projects. And he's going to share that with us today. He's going to share why he's doing it because of what's going on in the market right now. Before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsors. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days with rates starting as low as 9%. For more information, call 888-296-1697. B2R Finance makes loans tailored specifically for rental investors. They can help you unlock equity from existing properties so you can get cash out to grow your rental portfolio. That's huge and opens up lots of opportunities previously not available to rental investors. Need a loan? Call 855-819-4412 or visit b2rfinance.com today. AceBusinessFunding.com can help you get up to $150,000 in revolving credit lines to fund your business with rates as low as 0% for the first 12 to 18 months. Use the funds for startup costs, marketing, inventory, or almost anything your business needs. If you can't get funding, you don't pay a dime. Get funds for your business today at AceBusinessFunding.com. We'd also like to thank Specialized IRA Services, National Real Estate Insurance Group, and VirtualStaffNow.com. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Coco, my friend, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So it's interesting. I'm excited to talk about this because, I'm in Texas where the prices are much lower than on the coast. And so we've got a lot of listeners in California and certainly on the East Coast and stuff where there's a real opportunity to exploit kind of build price versus market price per square footage. And we don't really have a whole lot of that here in Texas. There's some, but I think it's a really fascinating topic. And for somebody that loves major rehabs, I love major rehabs. I wish I had more of that. So I'm not sure I'm going to move to California because I'm in the land of milk and honey right now, but I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely doing a lot of major rehabs at this point. I think it really makes sense for our market to do that because our price per square foot is basically most areas above $300 a square foot.
Yeah.
So, sometimes we're getting close to 400 and, in prime areas like Studio City, we're doing new construction and that tops out around like between $500 and $550 a square foot.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, before we get started talking about this stuff, why don't you tell us your background and how you got into real estate investing and, maybe even some of the cycles you've been through that have kind of got you to where you are today?
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, you probably don't even know this, but I used to be a chiropractor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I practiced for 8 years and
I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks. So maybe you can adjust me while I'm there. Yeah.
For a price, but for the last I think 11 years right now, since 2004 I've been in real estate investing.
Okay.
And I got into the field essentially in 2004, jumped into some spec homes basically in Florida and Las Vegas. So back when the market was crazy hot, it went up 48% and 49% in those two states respectively. So we did a bunch of houses in Vegas and a bunch of houses in Cape Coral. And, of course, those went up and came back down really, really nicely later. So, but that's how we got started. And then we got into lending as well, and we experienced the, '05, '06, and suddenly the crash of '07, and so bank doors locked, and New Century going down, IndyMac going down. We had that website called Lender Implode, where you would just essentially see banks shutting down, and it was just like a countdown.
Wow.
So it was crazy times. But through that we changed our business, I guess, to the tune of what was essentially happening. We also did a lot of short sales because of that. Obviously, a lot of short sales came in, and we started the first flips back in '08. Short sale flips. We did the land trust deal, and Corey had a lot to lend about that, and on that front. But nonetheless, we've been rehabbing since that time. So it's been about another 7 years since we did our first one. So we primarily started with some of the carpet paint tile stuff, right? And then we ventured on to a little bit of square footage additions here and there, and now we're basically doing full-blown renovations, and our budgets most of the time are well over $100,000 on these homes.
Yeah, you guys are doing some really high-end stuff, I know, too. Some big projects. Well, can you maybe share for a couple minutes, just share, you see where the market is today. It feels like it's getting a little overheated. You probably felt some of this stuff back in, '05, '06, but the market is really different now than it was then. I mean, there's a lot of international investment. There's a lot of, things that are different, but there's probably some things that are the same, too. But you learned a lot during that last cycle, right?
Sure.
And so what are some of maybe just share some lessons for what you learned during that cycle, how you feel right now about what's going on, at least in your market, and maybe what some people can learn from that, like to kind of prepare or think about, what they should be thinking about, maybe that they're not.
Sure. I mean, back then everyone was banking on appreciation. So, they were assuming that the prices were going to go up another 10% in, next 6 months, essentially. But that is, I think it's being capped right now, especially in California. So you're looking at affordability going down pretty low. I think we're somewhere around 20% right now. And when things start getting shaky is roughly about 17%. And we hit that mark before because we had essentially a lot of these, wacky mortgages, right? So, the option arms and so on and so forth. But we don't have any of those mortgages right now. So a lot of them are essentially FHA mortgages or at least 10 or 20% down. So the market's more stable in that regard. But what I'm seeing is that there's less and less REO and short sale inventory, of course, 25% year over year between last year and this year. And essentially that translates into higher prices. And so what's happening is rehab.
You're saying REO inventory is down 25%?
Absolutely, yeah. Foreclosure inventory and so on. So with that being said, you have essentially less rehab properties on the market. So the problem is that when you're rehabbing your home, you got to have those comps to support it, right? So when we start going back like 90 days, there's very, very few comps within that 1 mile radius of our subject property. And because we're doing really nice homes, you got to substantiate that value, right? So, to a rehabber or wholesaler, in our market, what I would say, just you buyer beware, because what's sold right now, or at least in the last 90 days, is probably not going to be usable in the next 90 days, right? So it's going to be gone. So are there more homes coming on that are rehabbed homes? And that's what you got to kind of look out for to see, hey, where are my comps going to come from? Because if those comps aren't there, I mean, your price per square foot average out over, let's say, 6 months could be there, but appraisers don't use price per square foot as much as they use real value, sale prices.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is how are appraisers looking at this stuff? Because if you're having a hard time finding comps, they're either going to often assume something is a comp when it's not, or, you're banking on them seeing the value the same way that you saw it, right?
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. So how are appraisers looking at this stuff when especially on higher end homes? I mean, this is a question, I guess, across the board for higher end homes that, if you're like me and you're typically buying first time home buyer type houses, like cookie cutter style houses, usually you're in huge neighborhoods and there's always comps. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to find, but on real high end stuff, a lot of times it's hard to find something that's apples to apples anyway in any market, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are appraisers? How are they looking at things right now, I guess, in your neck of the woods for high-end homes?
My conversation, at least with the appraiser, is, price per square foot is great, and it's a benchmark that we actually will look at a little bit. But the reality is that if this 2,000 square foot house, if you're trying to pitch $700,000 for this property, There's got to be something else that's remotely close to that did sell for 700,000. Even though, let's say, if you drop down to 1,800 or 1,700, that price per square foot, if you use that price per square foot, yours should be valued at 700,000. They're not looking at it that way. They're looking at, there has to be another 2,000 square foot house that's sold for 700,000 to comp yours against that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So price per square foot wise, I could get to that number. Because as you obviously drop in square footage, like a 1,700 square foot house is going to have a higher price per square foot than, let's say, a 2,000 square foot house.
Right.
But I still can't use that number to substantiate mine, even though
I see. So they would just typically start going out further and further,
right?
Distance wise.
And then it's going to be subjective because now you've got appraisers that don't want to step outside their guidelines, right, and go past 1 mile, even though you can't find a like-kind property within that radius.
Right.
Or they're going to go into, let's say, a neighboring city. So that tends to be an issue as well.
Right, right. Well, so let's talk about, I guess, how you've kind of transitioned lately into doing a lot more heavy construction and really a lot of add-ons, right? As you're adding on a lot of square footage to create value that way, right?
Sure, exactly.
Yeah. So kind of talk about, why you're doing that, and then let's kind of get into, how you're doing it, how you're adding value, and kind of why that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, a lot of our homes are essentially 1950s built homes, right? So they're the small, 3-2s that you see in normal neighborhoods across the country. So what you have in those situations is you have a small master bath, right, and a small master bedroom. Well, these buyers, I had an open house yesterday. I had about 80 people come through that open house in a rehab.
Wow.
Okay, it was nuts. And, we do some special marketing techniques we'll hopefully fill you in on afterwards. But nonetheless, we have a ton of people come in, and they're primarily first-time home buyers with small children or pregnant and so on and so forth, right? But what are they looking for? They're looking for, a bedroom for the kids or something like that, or nursery, but they're also looking for something that's really nice for them. At this intro-level price point, it would be really nice to have a large master bedroom and really nice to have a master bathroom that looks like a spa.
Sure,
so
yeah.
That's what we focus our efforts on. Those two areas, as well as the kitchen, of course, just like everybody else does. So what we tend to do is we, do open concepts, put a bunch of beams up, and really open up the living room. But by adding those 2 rooms and making it really nice and big and really nice, ours stands out no matter what against everything else.
Right.
That's what the selling point is. And so now you're essentially adding, square footage to the property, somewhere in the vicinity of 300 square feet, maybe upwards of 500 square feet. And in LA County, if you add up to 500 square feet, it's done over the counter. So for permitting sake, it's a lot easier to do.
Okay.
You don't have to go through plan check and months on end of reviews and so on and so forth. You could essentially do it over the counter within, let's say, a week to 2 week time frame.
Okay.
So that's why we do it that way.
Yeah.
Or we'll do construction in phases, and we'll get 1 permit, and then we'll get the second permit, and so on. And that'll prevent us again from going to, full blown review. So.
Yep. So part of it is you want to stand out because you're putting out a product that, has a lot of the things that new builds have, which would be a large master suite, larger kitchen, all those things. And part of it is to add square footage to kind of exploit that kind of difference between build price and what the average selling price is in the neighborhood you're in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So instead of when you kind of look at a house, so if you're looking at let's just say a 2,000 square foot house, you're comparing it against other 2,000 square foot houses, you're limited by that square footage if all you do is make the house nice again. But if you say, hey, I can add on 200-300 square feet and it's selling for $300 plus a square foot, and what's your kind of build price typically on adding square footage?
It depends. If you're adding a bathroom and so on, it could get up to like 100, 120,
Yeah.
And if it's something simple, let's say just blowing out like a rec room portion, maybe down to 85.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is our prime niche is essentially find something that's anywhere between 1,300 and 1,600 square feet and get that thing up to like 1,800 or 2,000.
Yeah.
That's that niche. And these lot sizes, you're typically looking at somewhere between 6,000 to hopefully like 8, 9, 10,000.
Okay.
And so that's that niche. You're looking at a small house on a fairly decent lot where you can exploit that backyard. And if we can build at 100, I mean, we just take, round numbers, but if we can build at $100 a square foot and we're selling at $350 a square foot,
right?
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out we just added $250 times 300 square feet, $75,000 in value.
Yeah, and the difference there, one of the interesting things about that too is if you think about how competitive it is right now with other investors, not most investors don't want to add square footage, right? They don't want to make that extra effort. They don't want to do rehabs that big. They don't want to deal with the permitting issues. So you kind of are starting to, it'll essentially, I'm not saying that you should pay more, but it would effectively allow you to potentially pay a little bit more and beat somebody out because you're going to make it up on the square footage ad. So your competition, is not quite as fierce as it would if you weren't going to add square footage, right?
You are broadcasting live to everybody, right? Like, you're
Yeah.
just giving up the nuggets. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we're not going to broadcast this in California. We're only doing it in everything but California.
okay. No, man, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We're able to pay a little bit more for a property, and we'll be able to get in because, someone that's just going to do a lipstick job on the home, they're not going to get as much value as what we're doing, obviously.
Right.
So we're looking at essentially, if we get up to $400 a square foot, $450 a square foot, that's a sweet spot right there because you're just making money on every single square foot that you add on that property.
Sure. Yeah. So, would you say, and are you doing some new build stuff as well?
Yeah, we're doing some new construction. Yeah, some high-end new construction.
Okay. So kind of talk about the areas you invest in, and there's probably not a lot of kind of virgin land to build on, right? So if you're building, you're gonna scrape something, probably, right?
Yeah, most definitely. Most of the time we're scraping it. 9 times out of 10, we'll leave one wall up. And so that one wall up business, essentially, it saves us on a lot of taxes. So, the difference could be essentially $10,000 to $20,000 in additional taxes just by leaving that wall up versus new construction. Yeah. So for new construction, you're going to get hit on taxes on the whole new square footage. So if you knock the thing down and you build 3,000 square feet, you got 3,000 square feet of taxes. But if you already had 1,500 square feet and you're adding 1,500, you only get taxed on the 1,500 square foot addition.
Okay.
So it's a huge difference,
Yeah.
So,
and I think the different states have, for those that are listening, that's probably a California thing. Every state's probably a little bit different. And I'm not sure if it's even at the county level potentially, but California's a little different anyway, right?
We do.
As is Texas, where I'm at. So just
Yeah.
here, it's different in a good way. There, it's kind of, I won't say anything else, but
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So talk about, this is kind of a tool you're using to, I don't say weather the storm, but to kind of deal with this market. And we've had some guests on lately, and we're talking about, dealing with this market, dealing with market cycles, and maybe kind of talk about, when you see that changing. I'm not saying time wise, but kind of, this is a tool you're using right now,
Sure.
but you might do something different in a year from now if the market's different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, you're going to look at the comparables that they're going to pop up within this next 6 months or so, and it's going to determine exactly what we're able to do. In the higher price point areas, we're still able to renovate a property, and that have somewhat of a barrier, right? I mean, when you have bread and butter homes that are first time home buyers, those are going to get beaten pretty quickly, right? But the people that have more cash to spend, we're looking at $1 million plus. That price point usually hopefully won't get beat up as bad as the lower price point is concerned. So, and then of course in that price point, you could put gold toilets and someone will pay specifically because there's gold toilets in that property.
You're probably less likely to have appraisal issues, or you're less likely to be using FHA at those levels at least. So you're probably less likely to have appraisal issues, right? Well, I think you and I know what I just asked you, but can you kind of explain that a little bit, like how you consider the appraisal or the type of financing that a user is using as to, how much you can push the envelope on your price?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, right now you got predominantly FHA buyers, right? So they're 3.5% down. So the bread and butter homes that we're selling are somewhere between high fives and like $600,000-$700,000, somewhere in that ballpark. So for that client, they're essentially putting down somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000. Where the closing costs are also about $20,000 depending on the loan they get. So that's a lot of that's a lot of money to bring down to a property, $40,000. So they can usually wrap their closing costs in the loan. So that'll get rid of half those funds, which is great. So they're able to get into this property for basically $20,000. Now, with that said, though, I mean, when you start venturing into the bigger price points, now you're looking at 20% down all day, right? So now it's on 700 plus, 800 plus. I mean, you're looking at $140,000, $160,000 down without the closing costs. So it's a real big swing. So everybody we see is getting in FHA loans. Now with FHA loans, of course, you've got some issues, right? So you got to make sure that the property is spick and span. And that means that, you can't have the peeling paint, you can't have a crack in the window. There's an FHA appraiser as well as inspection done at the same time. So those are the issues that we come across. But they're not really too big of a problem for us, because 9 times out of 10 we're replacing all the windows, replacing the roof, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and the appraisals though with FHA though, they're one appraisal. I don't want to say it's impossible to change them, but if you have to get 2 appraisals, which you often do as a real estate investor turning it around, if one of those whichever the lowest is what they go with, right? But usually on non-FHA loans, the lender typically doesn't care as long as it appraises for the amount that they're lending on, right?
Right, exactly. And of course, you have a 90-day hold, right? So if you're buying a property and flipping it as an investor, you've got to hold that property for at least 90 days before the resale is done.
Right.
Now, major construction, that's not really an issue for us because we're definitely past that point.
Sure.
But the other part is that, if it's below 90 days, it's got to be 20%, right? So it can't be 20% above the previous value, or then they're requiring 2 appraisals, or it's a lender overlay and they'll always want 2 appraisals,
Right.
So we're typically getting properties that are essentially like 320, and our flip out is 550. That's a significant jump.
Right.
But it's a major remodel with additional square footage. So a lot of times the lender will understand that and see it, but it's definitely a problem with the lower price points.
Sure. Yeah. So where do you think this is what you're doing in this market, and having been through some cycles? I mean, I know that from talking to you before that you're a little concerned that things might take a downturn in California at some point, and the rest of the country is watching what happens in California, obviously. But in terms of writing cycles, what would how would your strategies change? How do you anticipate that they would change? Would you do less major remodels? I mean, what would kind of happen when the market goes down? I won't say if it goes down, but when, because the markets shift. So in terms of kind of planning out cycles, where do you see things? Where would you go from here?
Well, one of the things that we're looking to do is instead of picking up the properties ourselves, there's a model that we're looking to and actually have practiced it a bunch of times, where we actually just come in and we renovate the property for the seller. That essentially is, it's not major construction, but we'll still do like lipstick jobs essentially. But we're blowing out the house and doing, all new cabinets, all new floors, all new everything, LED lights and all that good stuff. Stuff that a normal seller doesn't want to do or can't even do or doesn't have the funds to do. So we'll bring in all those funds and do it for them. And then my wife is a real estate broker, Gina Michelle Project. Yeah. She'll go ahead and list and design the property and sell it. So we end up getting both ends of that transaction. And it's a win-win because we don't have to actually purchase the property ourselves. There's no hard money costs. There's no carrying costs. There's no risk factor in that. And, the property will sell for higher than the current state that it's in. Sure. And the seller will still make out better than what they were at before. So that's a win-win that we're looking at during this plateau and maybe the downturn a little bit, so to bridge the gap until we can buy property again.
Yep. Awesome. Well, hey, Coco, we have a little bit of extra time. Do you want to go ahead and talk about what we were talking about beforehand, which was the how you get so many people to an open house? And I mean, you guys are doing some pretty amazing stuff, like really creating a frenzy. Do you want to maybe talk about that for a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one thing I can tell, to any rehabbers, I mean, just don't make a cookie cutter house. Don't buy tile at Home Depot, right? Go out and find a tile store, and there's great designs out there. Like House is a really good a site to take out, to look at different designs and whatnot. Right. But just have a little bit more design elements in your property itself. Here's a cool tidbit. There's a Bluetooth bathroom fan / speaker. It's $150. Stick that in, right, in the master bathroom. They can play, music through the Bluetooth speaker in their master bathroom. Really cool feature. Only costs $150, but it's a wow factor.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So what we do is we always list our properties low, typically about 5% lower than everything else that's selling in the area. Okay, and so our properties come in lower, so when everyone looks at it, they're like, "Whoa, what's going on there?" And B, we get a bunch of people that are coming to the property that may not even be able to qualify for that house. Okay, it's probably out of their price point, so they'll still come in and take a look at it. But what we're trying to do is get as many people in that house as possible. We'll also drop about 500 mailers like every door delivery, U.S. Postal, to everybody around that area. And, since the neighbors have been seeing and watching us do the renovations, they're all very eager to show up.
Right.
So today,
I always got those nosy neighbors.
oh, we got all those neighbors, man. They love to come by, and you know what? Let them come, because the reality is nobody knows who the buyer is and who their neighbor is, and so on and so forth. So all I want to make sure that happens that day is that the buyer is in the same room with 20 other people. As long as I can get that done, then that buyer thinks, man, I got to put my best foot forward day one on this thing, and that's what we do, is we just stir up a lot of activity on the property, and we're usually not on the market for more than 10 days.
So you're putting a property out and you're just kind of creating this frenzy of almost like an auction, like everybody comes in and somebody's afraid that they won't get it. And so they're willing to, and you're artificially kind of pushing the price down, knowing that people will probably start to bid more than price, rather than pricing it higher than what you're willing to accept and working it down. You're just going the other way.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the wrong play. If you're trying to get 700 on your property, you don't want to list it at 725 and then get down to 700. It doesn't make any sense, because every time that we've listed, we've sold a ton of properties, and every time we list a property, when that property ages on the MLS, it's death for that property. Every week that goes by, it's death for that property, because they can see it. They smell blood, and they're like, oh, I can come in lower than the asking price.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing. You're inviting that. Now, when you list it low, you're simply saying, look, I'm not deciding what the price of this property is. I could really list that property for $1, right? And it's like eBay. Come in and make an offer. All it says is, I'm for sale. What do you want to offer? And then people, they ask us at the open house, and we'll say, look, pull the comparables, but we've seen X, Y, and Z. And so they'll go back and they'll do their own due diligence. So it really helps out the situation when people, because what happens is somebody's probably lost out on 3 or 4 houses, right? And
they're not going to lose out on this one.
Not to lose out on that one. And I don't know who that person is. And some other couple may have come in, and this is their first week shopping for houses. And they're going to lose that one. But the other one, as soon as they see a bunch of people in that room, they're going to like, man, we need to go above asking on this deal. So
talk about what you do. So you have a very limited time, I assume, kind of a 1 or 2 hour like slot where everybody is pretty much there at the same time, 2 hours.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then what are people doing while they're there? They're just looking at each other and worried about losing the deal, or how do you get that many people in a house?
Yeah, I got to give credit up to my good boy Jordan Fisher. He's got a great system, and
Jordan's been on the show before.
Yeah. So, what we'll do is we'll put it on the market, and we won't let anybody see the property for at least 1 week before the showing. So people will call in, and they want to get in. Oh, my client's out of town, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, can't see it until that day. So we stir up, the crowd for basically 1 week, and we put it on Zillow and so on and so forth. And then, when they finally get there, it's only open for 2 hours instead of the normal 4-hour window, right? So everyone gets crammed in, whether they want to or not, to come in at that time. And when people call and ask, can we come see, we can't make it that day, can we come in next week? Are going to put a lockbox on it and so on? To be honest with you, I think it'll probably go that day.
Right.
So we may not even need to show it after that. Now they're just like, oh, okay, we got to make it, So we just want to shuffle everybody in through that door that day. We want to get out of the way of the market and let the market decide what the value is. And and that's what they do. And people will come with offers in hand that day. So.
And you put pictures, so you list it, but you just don't make it available for showing, so they can see pictures and stuff online.
Yeah. They can see
awesome.
Pictures. They start drooling, and they're like, oh, got to go see this. Because in our price point, we're typically listing roughly 30, maybe sometimes 50,000 below the sale, the actual target.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot, So they'll come in and they'll see it listed for 525, but our target is really 575, and we'll hit it. But what it does is bring up everybody that's looking up to 525 or for 550 that can't even afford to buy that house.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But
awesome. Well, Coco, hey, thanks for spending time with us today. Any kind of final words of wisdom? We talked about, how you've evolved in this market by doing some things differently. Any kind of wrap up or final comments you want to make on this?
Yeah. Don't bank on appreciation. Don't bank on appreciation. Know your comparables and know the product that you're putting out. Know that your product's going to have to be superior to the other comparables that you're seeing out there if you want to hit that mark, especially now. So.
And Coco, how do folks learn more about you? Where do they go if they want to see what you're working on?
we've got, the Gina Michelle project on Facebook. A lot of our projects are on there. Just renovation to new construction, high end, low end. You got everything on there. So check out the GinaMichelleProject.com.
I'll add a link for that. Awesome. Well, Coco, hey, thanks for being with us today, and I'll be seeing you sometime here in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mike, for having me.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.